folks. So we're gonna look at this is a video of some decks that have just been sort of on my shelves for a while that I haven't really felt like making whole videos about, but just figured someone might want to see them. And sometimes I make videos because I feel like making them, and sometimes I make videos because you might be bored and want something to watch. And that's what this one is. So I'm just getting myself in order here because chaos is my name O. Anyway, so these are in no particular order, and I'm not going to do full walkthroughs of any of them, but I just figured I got them, so why not, talk about them. They were either given to me, gifted to me, or came into my possession in one way or another, and so I figured, let's take a look. The first one is this. It's the Kiri Tarot, which is a Lo Scarabeo deck. And I believe this is how this is pronounced, Kiri, in Greek or ancient Greek. But Circe sounds prettier to me. But I try to say things right. So anyway, Fabio Vicentin and Pierluigi Serra created the artwork for this, and I mostly got this because it looks like it was going to be Art Deco. And I, as a good homo, love Art Deco. I really don't, or didn't know much about Kiri, and still kind of don't. Like, there's not really much in the little white book that explains sort of what's going on. But the majors all do feature sort of folks in Greek myth, gods, goddesses, humans, and it's quite pretty. This isn't a deck that I felt like, oh gee, I've been longing for this. But it's quite pretty, not as sort of deco as I kind of hoped it would be. But it's interesting. It's got like a nice color palette. It's surprisingly diverse for Lo Scarabeo, I think, although of course, not anywhere near enough, but I was like, oh, and that was another reason why I picked it up, to say, well, let me look at this all the way through. But some cards are quite beautiful, like this one. Others look a little muddier. It's an inconsistent deck. But I don't know why I thought it. I guess the box made me think it was going to sort of be Art Deco. I love Erte and Beardsley. I don't even know if they are considered Art Deco. I think they are. But so I always sort of wanted, and I think there is like an Erte deck that someone made out there, but I've never looked closely at it. But I just love that style of art. There's something very queer about Art Deco to me, and I don't know why. Maybe just because I like it. But anyway, so this features Greek myths, and it does, the little book does actually sort of give you a sense of the stories. That's the back. It's pretty. It's not, it's like, there were just sometimes things where I'm like, oh, maybe I'll get that and make a video about it for the channel, and then other times where, I don't know, I'm curious. So this one, it actually reminds me a little bit of the, that's Hermes or Mercury. It reminds me a little bit of the, oh god, I can't remember the name of the deck. It's an old one. It's the one with the blue backs with white stars on it. It's a US Games deck. I cannot remember the name of it. I will have to look it up. Anyway, it reminds me of that, if you have any idea what I'm talking about, which was one of my first decks. So that's the Kiri Tarot. Again, like, it's pretty. I didn't feel like making a video about it, so that tells you like how much it'll get used by me, right? But here it is. It's interesting. This is another interesting one. This is Navigators of the Mystic Sea. This is not new. This is a very old deck, and this exists now in an independently published version, which may be slightly better than this US Games version, if I remember correctly, but I just happened to find this this out of print version, and it was inexpensive, and so I just picked it up because this deck was one that I was looking at when I was going through my keywords experiment, and so that was really just what it sounds like. I was working with decks that had keywords on them, and I picked two, which wound up being the Sun and the Moon and the Voyager Tarot. But I looked at a bunch, and some that I didn't have, and so this was one of them that I picked up. I'm not a fan of the back. Like, I don't think this would fly today with this sort of like this cropping of this image, right? Like, I don't mind borders on fronts of cards, honestly, no bigs. This back though it just feels like poorly designed. It's interesting. I don't. It's its own thing. The keywords are really not specifically the titles, as I was reprimanded by some rando recently, but they're not fully the Golden Dawn titles or keywords, and they all have keywords. So the majors have keywords too. So strength is keywords, omnipotence. It's Thoth-the influenced, but it's actually a really interesting, and the art is quite pretty. When did this come out? Does this have a copyright date on it? No. Does the little white book have a copyright on it? 1997. So it's not as old as I thought it was, but then again, I think 1997 was 5 years ago. So yeah, there's an indie version of this, and I haven't worked with it at all, just because it wasn't one of the ones that I chose to work with, and the ones that I did choose, I'm still sort of having a love affair with. But the keywords on this one are really interesting, and unusual. Some of them are very Golden Dawn, but some aren't, and many aren't, and I like that. And again, it's just got a very, I don't know what the style would be. It just is giving like a little bit of sort of science fiction illustration. I don't know how to describe it. But anyway, it's pretty, and I think it's worth a look. And I sort of had intended to get the new independently published version, and it just so happened that I found this one for really cheap. And I sort of knew I wasn't going to use this one. But yeah, I mean, that back, I don't love, you know, if you've been around here, some problems I have, not with Kabbalah, but with the use of Kabbalah in the Golden Dawn. And so I just sort of feel like it's not a thing that I reach for, although it's kind of everywhere. But yeah, I mean, the keywords are really interesting and different, and I think, the Ace of Swords is called Respiration. That's cool. So I absolutely can see working with this deck. I think the new indie edition may have a different back, which I hope is the case, and might be designed and set up differently. But I don't mind the fronts of the cards at all. They used to do this a lot, US Games, with these sort of like strange usages of white space. But I don't know. I mean, like I've said before, borders on cards just help me see things, discreetly as well as collectively, which is useful for me as a reader. So this is interesting. While the Kirky deck I think is beautiful, I don't see myself using it much. This I can see playing around with for sure. And one of the side effects I think of my working with keywords is that they don't bug me anymore, honestly. Sometimes I don't even see them, even on decks that I'm really familiar with. And that, that's kind of, after a while, what I expected, right? I'd been so sort of vehemently anti-keyword for so long that in working with them, I realized that, like any other part of the reading, it's just another piece of context. This is the Barbara Walker Tarot, which has had an interesting life. So, it was at one time published as the Witches Tarot, or the Tarot of the Witches, something like that. And it was used in I think it was used in a James Bond movie, and so you can find editions of this called the James Bond Tarot. It's interesting, and then so this is the new U.S. Games Tarot in a Tin edition. People have very mixed feelings about the tarot on a tin. I like them. I like the size of the cards. The original cards were bigger, but the images were smaller. So in this reprint, they somehow managed to make the images larger and the cards smaller, which to me is quite successful. It's a weird, very strange deck. This is the Magician card, which I've always loved. I wanted this deck early on, but there was always something about it where, like, on the forums back in the 90s when I started reading, there was just this very kind of, like, I mean, now I would say maybe sort of like bias, but there was just this thing, like, some decks were sort of darker than others, and, you know, we shouldn't sort of get too dark, and I don't know, I think that comes out of, like, the whitewashing of tarot as a psychospiritual tool only. But it's a really interesting deck. So it is fairly thothy. Now it's called the Barbara Walker Tarot. Its artwork is really strange, but not bad. Just it's sort of, you know, it feels very of its time. When did this deck come out originally? Is this going to tell me this? It doesn't. They're so weird about copyrights at U.S. Games. 1986 was when it originally came out. So, you know, again, it's not new. But it's always had kind of a cult following, for lack of a better term. It does have really sort of dark keywords in many ways, especially in the suit of swords, but also in the suit of wands. It's really fascinating. It's sort of notably a feminist deck, I think, is part of its mythos. I don't know what that means in this context. You know what I mean? Like, but again, like, it just doesn't. It's I guess what was coming out at that period was much more sort of earth mothery, and this is a different thing. And all the courts are sort of gods from various traditions around the world, and it's strange. I can see why people like it. Because there's something very sort of disarming about it, in a strange way. But I don't think that I can see myself working with it because of the keywords on it. Like, the suit of swords is mostly pretty neg. Doom, balance, sorrow, seclusion, defeat, passage, opposition, disillusion, cruelty, and ruin, right? Those aren't the Golden Dawn titles or keywords, but it's interesting. But it's, you know, I love Kali as the Queen of Swords. You know, it's just to me it's a fascination. I don't know. We'll see. But this I did not get when I was exploring my keyword experiment, because I had forgotten about it and that it had keywords. It just sort of was something I had seen pop up. You know how, like, decks will start having a moment again? This one started seeming to have a moment. And I was like, oh, right, I remember that. I was afraid of it when I was young. Let me take a look at it now. So that's that. That's the Barbara Walker deck. You can see I don't really have strong opinions about any of these. So, I mean, there's a reason for that. This is the Crysis Tarot. I have no idea why I ordered this. The only reason I know that I ordered it is because it's here in my hands. Do not remember. It's an interesting deck. It's sort of using myth It's got a very rich color palette. I don't dislike it. I just sort of it's again, it's very kind of fairy tale-ish. I don't mind the borders. I don't really I'm not bothered by that. It's just giving very fairy tale. So we have Merlin as the fool. So it's taking a very kind of like specific I like that this Phoenix is not the death card. It's the judgment card. And that actually makes more sense, I think, to me. So the all the majors are renamed, but they have the original names on them too. And it's quite pretty. I just think aesthetically, like, maybe not for me, but I do love Papa Legba as strength. I love that. I don't know. It is, yeah, like, I guess this kind of is what turns me off. Like, these lovers cards that are so sort of like, I don't know, Princess Bridey. I know that people love that movie. It's just never drawn me. But then there's this wheel card, which I really quite love. So it's interesting. It's an interesting deck. I have not worked with it at all. Anything with owls, I'm deeply fond of. We've got mirrors. We've got stones. We've got Ariadne as death, Psyche as the world. I mean, the artwork is very fantasy and very beautiful, and the color palette is gorge. I think it's giving principally sort of Celtic with touches of more international and obviously you can see there are faces of global majority in here, but I think it's definitely leaning Celtic. The Celtic owl, the hanged man, like this kind of stuff is like, what? That doesn't make sense to me. But again, you have to remember I have a very sort of specific way of reading, and I'm very different than a lot of folks would read things. Here we have Kali as the tower. And that's the thing. It's an interesting thing. I mean, it's an interesting thing in terms of this Hierophant is interesting, the divine child. This reminds me of some children's books I had when I was a kid. I don't know why. What I was going to say about Kali is sort of, it's like when we take deities out of their cultures, what are we saying about them? And I don't have a good answer for that, but I do quite like this emperor. I like an emperor that has something more than just the atrocities of patriarchy. Look, I read that card that way all the time, but there are times where, an emperor quality is useful and necessary. Art-wise, I find it absolutely stunning, and the back is really pretty as well. Gaia as the Empress. I know that this is going to piss people off, but to me, like, the depiction of Gaia as a white lady just feels, I don't know, like, that's an idea that's older than whiteness, I guess. Which I'm sure is going to leave me with comments that I'm going to have to deal with. But I do, in looking at it, find it attractive. It's I don't know if there's a book that goes with it. Mott as Justice. Yeah, I don't know. It's pretty. I haven't. I mean, I've obviously shuffled it because it's not in order, but I don't recall ever using it. And I don't even know how long it's been on my shelf. It was one of those things where it came in. I looked like, this is the thing I do too when I get depressed, and I was exceptionally depressed this winter. Is I will just order things for the dopamine hit. You know what I mean? And then they come in, and the need has dispersed, and so I don't really look at them again. This is the Tarot of Prague, which I was given by a friend who was cleaning out their collection. I have the book as well. This is coming back into print, I think, but has been out of print, and this is a more recent edition of it because you can see the cold stamping that they're so obsessed with. I think that this, in part, was interesting to me because it's such a cult deck. Like, it falls into that category of things that were really hard to get for a long time. I think this was Baba Studio's first deck. In many ways, I think it's their most successful. Because it was made for love of a city, in a way that, I don't know. It's difficult to see in some of their new decks. I don't know. I have a love-hate relationship. The production quality of their decks is always exceptionally beautiful. The cardstock is always incredibly beautiful. Prague is a city that I find really fascinating. It's a place I'd like to visit. I read a great novel, a mystery called The Golem of Hollywood, actually, which was what that have to do with Prague. A big chunk of the story takes place in Prague. And there's just a thing about that city, I think, because, I remember listening to the director, Milos Forman, who directed Amadeus, and they filmed that movie in Prague, and he said, and I think he was from Prague, and he said, it's, because of communism, nothing was modernized, and so everything looks, hundreds of years old, and for tourists, so it's really exciting. And I think that may be part of it, too. There's just sort of a quality of wanting to see it. But this actually is a quite pretty deck, and, again, I haven't used it. Not to say I wouldn't, but, I don't know. It's the thing with Baba Studios at this point is it's almost become like a collect. You just sort of. In fact, I have a couple Oracle decks of theirs that I haven't even shared, the fortune-telling cards that they put out last year, which I guess I can make a movie about, a video about at some point. Yeah, I don't know. It's a pretty deck. I don't know what to say about it beyond that, but I like it. And knowing, the gift of it was generous, given how much these can go for aftermarket. And then the final one that I'm going to share with you is the Witch Sisters deck, which, let me zoom out just a little bit more. I don't know what to make of it yet. And what I do think is that it is stunning. The reason that this was intriguing to me, first of all, again, a friend shared it with me, and I thought, oh, this looks really interesting. Being Llewellyn, though, I'm always a little on the iffy side about it. It is a deck created by the creator of the I just can't remember things anymore. The names of decks, anyway. Tower of the Hidden Realm. So, again, a very Celtic-themed deck. The reason that I ordered this, though, was because I thought it was one of the few decks I've ever seen that was sort of very primarily elder. A lot of the figures in it were older, and some of the artwork, first of all, is breathtaking and evocative. This Hierophant card, the tradition, oh my God. You know what I mean? Like, the artwork is absolutely breathtaking, and there are so many grown faces in this, but adult faces. And, though it's called the Witch Sisters deck, and it's a fairly sort of feminine themed deck, it does feature men and male presenting figures, like the Lord of the Forest here instead of the devil. There's also some androgyny here, too. But I just loved the fact that we were seeing aged faces. And so I was drawn by that. And then I got it and did something I rarely do, which is I read the guidebook, because this is not your traditional deck. It's got its own sort of vision of tarot, and that's interesting to me too. Now, the thing that I haven't sort of parsed about that then is how to read with it. So I have tried working with this a little bit and done some readings for myself, and found them a little inscrutable. Now, it's fair to point out that I don't really like reading for myself all that much, and I don't do it that much. Did I show you the back? But I do, with certain decks, I do have some decent readings for myself, and I was hoping this would be one of those. But again, I may need to just sort of sit with what this is. Whenever I say that, though, part of the thing is you have to expect that I'm never going to do that because I just don't have the time. Love this star card. But I would like to, because I do think that it's so refreshing to see grown adult, wizened faces. And these close-up, and just things like, I don't know, heterochromia, and, I don't know, celebration of chromness, and really just the artwork. Again, like, these paintings are so beautiful. Like, this is not work that was done thoughtlessly and purely for a buck. You know what I mean? A lot of time and energy went into this. The Wheel of Fortune here as a fate sort of spinning. And the guidebook is pretty good. I think it actually could be longer, but I know that publishers will put restrictions on how much you can have in a guidebook. And Llewellyn is obsessed with wasting pages with these giant... I mean, I guess it's not a waste if you're the artist, right? Because you get to see these beautiful full-size images. But to me, so much more could be revealed. It's pretty good, you know what I mean? So we get a sense of who the person on the card is, and like, I'll just read the Hermit here. Here we see Gormshwil, Gaelic for blue eye, because she has one blue eye and one brown eye. That's heterochromia. Reclusive witch from the Lochabar in the Scotland Highlands, greatly renowned for her superior power and skills. Gormshwil dwelled alone, and I'm fully admitting that these Celtic words are going to be mispronounced by me. There are many tales of her prowess. I wasn't expecting to read this. The most celebrated is the story of the time when the island of Mull was under attack by a Spanish ship, which had come seeking vengeance on a local lord and lady. The invaders had threatened to mutilate all of the women on the island, so the witches of Mull were working together and attacking the Spanish ship in the form of gulls. However, the Spanish captain had magic of his own and was holding out against them until the last moment. Gormshwil came and delivered the decisive blow that sunk the ship and freed the island from threat. So you get a little bit of the myth of what you're seeing. It's just been hard for me to sort of understand that in the context of a tarot reading. And that is the thing that I find with a lot of themed decks. I don't think this is, like, themey in the way that, like, the cooking tarot is, but it is a deck specifically based on myths of Celtic Europe. And I thought that would be interesting, and it is, but I think what the book sort of does is set you up for, like, a primer, and then I think if you really want to understand things, you need to go further. I'd love to see a more in-depth book be created for this that digs deeper into the myths, but it's a beautiful work of art nonetheless. So, and I think all of these are beautiful. I don't, there's not one of these where I'm like, boy, this is really ugly. If it was, I wouldn't be showing it to you. You know what I mean? But they're just things that, like, either don't quite work for me or yet or whatnot. And I really am still having such a love affair with this Sun and Moon deck that I can't, and the Maria Tarot, two weirdly Thoth decks. But anyway, yeah, these are just some decks that have been on my shelves that didn't necessarily sort of need or, in my view, warrant a whole video, but that I thought would be interesting to share with you. And hopefully this is just a little something to watch while you're doing the dishes or whatever. So take care, be good, and we'll talk soon.